Coming up on this episode of Nothing to Bring.
We wish Matt Morris a happy birthday, get to see his present before discussing the DfE announcement on inclusion bases, the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill and surveillance in early years.
I'm Matt Morris.
I'm Sarah Johnson. And we
have nothing to bring. We're nearly there.
I reckon once we've done about 100 episodes, we might be able to join in with each other and it'd be smooth.
We'll have it down to a patter. It would just be there, perfect.
So, Mr. Matthew Morris, what have you been up to this week?
Thank you for using my full name, as only my mother would. What
Did your mother listen to this?
No, of course, no. Nobody I know listens to this except you, and you record it with me. So one day, maybe.
Okay.
Who knows?
Well, if Mr. Matthew Morris's mum is listening, hello.
Do you know what? Next time I see her, I will play it for her. And I'll play that you said hello to her. She'll love that.
Yeah, of course.
We won't have a clue what's going on, but why not? What we've been up to. So it was my birthday this week.
It was your birthday. I remember on the day it was your birthday because it was also my youngest daughter's birthday. Did you have a nice birthday?
Yeah, she looked like she had a wonderful birthday, by the way.
Yeah, Zed did. Yeah, she had a great time. She was well into the idea of being the birthday girl. Absolutely loved it.
And why not at that age? Whereas I reached a ripe old age, which I'm not going to say because a lady doesn't reveal her age. But it didn't stop me from getting some birthday presents.
What birthday presents?
Well, I'm gonna reach down and grab this birthday present, and it might take me a minute. And the reason it might take me a minute is because number one, it's quite heavy, and number two, it's in a box that I'm really trying to protect, and I'm quite scared of opening. I haven't yet opened it. So it is. I'm going to preface this with. It is the largest, most expensive Lego set I've ever owned.
Okay.
And I'm very, very excited by it. You can't tell, but I am.
So I should be telling the audience what he's doing. He's lifting up a very large box that is probably bigger than his head and upper torso.
Okay, so that doesn't fit on the camera particularly well, but it's the Goonies set, which from one side is a pirate ship. And then on the other side is scenes from the movie. And it comes with all the characters. So you get all of the kids, you get all of the Fratellis, the antagonists, not the band, the antagonists in the Goonies are the Fratellis. But you get all of them. And you get a little figurine of One-Eyed Willie, who is the pirate captain in the ship at the end of the film.
But you've not opened it yet.
I'm scared to.
Why are you scared? You're not going to enjoy it.
It's expensive. And I have this thing with, I know people keep the boxes, right? So some people collect and they keep the boxes. And what Lego have done, which is very neat, by the way, is they've redesigned the boxes so that the lid comes off and folds flat in a really neat way. And then the bottom, when emptied, folds flat in a really neat way so that you can keep and store the boxes because they've recognized that people like to keep them. A lot of Lego sets just have like a thumb thing that you bash your thumb into and rip open.
The younger kids ones do.
The kids ones do, but even some of the older ones do. I mean, this actually says 18 plus on it, by the way. This is an adult set.
Are you old enough to play with it? Are you mature enough?
Mature enough? No. Age-wise, yes, definitely. Based on what it says on the box. By the way, I think I've said this before. I really dislike the term adult fan of Lego or AFOL, however you pronounce it.
Affle.
Because it suggests that for some reason you shouldn't have liked Lego or shouldn't have had Lego, and now it's okay to, and really you should only have Lego's about family, it's about education, it's building,
no one has that perspective about AFL. You can self-identify as an AFL, that's fine.
Yeah, but I just don't like. So I don't feel like we need to define it. It's like we don't need to define boys and girls Lego, which, by the way, really infuriated me when I went into a charity shop the other day and saw a box. It was just like a cardboard box, and it said 20 quid, girls Lego. And I looked in the box, and it was like no, it wasn't, but it was sort of the Lego Friends sets.
Yeah.
What annoys me about Lego Friends is they are quite clearly just sets that anybody can play with. I'm going to have to put this down, by the way, because this is just getting quite weird.
Whilst you're putting it down, I'm being a good wife, and I've bought my husband Transformer comics, and they're called Hearts of Steel.
Is this a Valentine's thing?
This is for Valentine's Day, yeah. So I've got Hearts of Steel, boop, boop. And I've got sort of the first 4 comics that I managed to win a bid on eBay, which I'm really happy about. I don't mind saying it because my husband probably won't listen to this podcast till after he's got the present. I'll just make sure he doesn't.
But at least he'll listen, unlike my mum.
Yeah, no, he will listen because he's made to listen. There are rules. But I got him that because I just Googled hearts and Transformers and that's what came up. But it's kind of like steampunk, as if Transformers sort of in the, I suppose, late Victorian ages almost. Like steam trains.
Like the steampunk. So you've got one as a steam train that I've seen, one as a cannon.
Yeah, and I was
cool.
going to purchase the items, but it kept on rejecting my purchase for some reason. So I kind of gave up and I thought, well, I've got it in the comics and then maybe I can get that in the future when I've got enough time.
Yeah, that's cool. He'll like those.
Yeah, I think he will.
Yeah, really good set. Whilst there's other I've just seen, by the way. So I know that he's not a massive fan of kind of crossover Transformers. I do know that because I've just seen there is a He-Man figure.
He does love He-Man,
Optimus Prime armor. Now that might be a crossover that he likes.
There might be. I think, is it Masters of the Universe? Is that He-Man? Am I getting muddled?
No, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe.
Okay, because there's a new film coming out as well, isn't there?
The new movie coming out. Yeah, Masters of the Universe trailer came out a few weeks ago.
I've just realised we're both crossing our arms. How miserable have we become?
Yeah, just so defensive and rude, isn't it?
Yeah, sorry.
Not at all communicative, as you need for a podcast that is also a video.
Yeah.
So yeah, Masters of the Universe coming out later this year, summertime. And so there's going to be a lot of new merch. I've seen a lot of new toys have come out, but that I'd not seen it. Just randomly saw it on social media the other day. But it's a He-Man figure with an Optimus Prime kind of chest plate and helmet, and then the face plate goes on, so he just looks like Optimus Prime. So I think that's something your husband might actually like, even though he doesn't like the sort of the crossover stuff. This is different.
Two worlds colliding that he likes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we show our maturity and do some news?
Well, that's the purpose of what we do, I guess, or not. But yeah, there's been quite a bit since we last put a podcast out, hasn't there?
There's been loads. And I think the biggest news was from the DFE announcement that all secondary schools will be expected to have inclusion bases where pupils can access targeted support that bridges the gap between mainstream and specialist provision. And this is forms part of the Department for Education's kind of broader estate strategy, due to be published later today. So presumably it's been published, but I haven't had time to read it. And it's about a wider push for more pupils with special educational needs and disabilities to learn in mainstream school. There's two models, one which will be commissioned by individual settings and academy trusts. They're called support basis, where specialist basis, be good if I could talk, would then be commissioned and funded by councils. It's interesting, I've been hearing them being called local authority resource provisions and the acronym LARPing, but LARP is live action role playing. So I think we should kind of say no to LARPs in that because it's too many acronyms that match. So I suppose my question to you is, what do you think about the inclusion bases if you've had enough time to think about them?
So the immediate thing, and I'm going to tie this into another piece of news, which perhaps we hadn't planned to talk about, but that happened a bit closer to the last podcast, which you spoke about on the radio, which was the plan to look at keeping suspended children in school. And I don't know how developed this idea is, but there is an idea that schools should look to keep suspended pupils on site in school rather than be suspended and go home. So internal suspensions. And the DFE, the local authorities, have started to record data on internal suspensions. And depending on what MIS system you use, you may already be recording internal suspension. And I think we talked a little bit about that previously.
Did. And how it's recorded and what does it mean. And we spoke about the Mossbourne safeguarding review as well, and the kind of phrase of desking of children essentially being sort of just in the hallways, I think, on at a desk, potentially working independently, but who knows.
But the commonality between those two stories is that both of them rely on the same thing, which is additional resourcing. They both rely on space within schools that schools don't have, and they also rely on staffing. Head teachers use suspensions as a last resort, or we should be using suspensions as a last resort. Look, we know there's a variety of practice, but if you use suspensions as a last resort, then you are not exponentially increasing the number of suspensions, and you are probably already adopting strategies to keep children in school. There's some really great practice. We've had lots of behavior policies move across to relationship policies. There's loads of relational practice. So the strategies are there to look at avoiding suspension. But you've got to have in your toolkit as a head teacher the ability to reset your school. And sometimes you need to make safe, reset, reintegrate. And often that means taking the child off the site in order to do that piece of work and then put the strategies in place in order to bring that child back. But you have to remember that the behavior of that child, wherever as a last resort you might be suspending, is probably having an impact on other children, the quality of education, your ability to operate within a school. So you've got to have it within your toolkit. So I'm not necessarily against the idea of trying to find ways to retain children and not suspend and keep them on site, but I can't see where the resources are going to come from. And then you link that to the resource bases, and there's not really a plan around where the resources are going to come from in order to put these send bases or inclusion spaces into all schools. And also, this is a bit of I think, again, this is very typical of the disconnect between policymakers and educators, because a lot of this provision is already there.
So as far as I can tell, there's been no funding model published. There's going to be, who knows what it's going to look like, I think. I suppose my concern is we've got specialist bases and support bases. So the support bases are funded by individual schools and trusts. That might be great. Specialist bases are funded by the local authorities. So I wonder if that's going to be an extension of the Section 19 duties about children not able to access education, what otherwise is the kind of, perhaps, I don't know. But what makes it a support base and a specialist base? Surely they should both be staffed by specialist staff. I'm concerned about that, but also...
Is it not just an inclusion base?
Well,
is it, because that's where the drive is. That's one of the key parts of Ofsted now is inclusion. So why aren't we using that language that we've started to really, I say started, many schools, many providers are already entrenched and embedding
doing it anyway
right across their practice and been doing it for a long time. But it's now a bigger part of the conversation. I
suppose it's saying that every secondary school will be having those inclusion bases and that kind of separation between support and specialist. And I suppose it's an ambition, but it's difficult to know how this ambition will actually be realised in reality. And the government does recognise that many schools already provide inclusion bases, often known as SEN units or pupil support units. I haven't heard them called pupil support units for a very long time, actually. That's quite old-fashioned language, isn't it?
It is.
And sort of strong positive elements where pupils thrive alongside their peers. I think my concern is it's just going to be a cheaper model when some children might need very specialist support potentially, or which children are going to go into those provisions. Are they going to be multiply disadvantaged anyway, and this just further isolates them?
Earlier on, I said there's a disconnect between policymakers and schools, and it feels like a knee-jerk reaction to trying to solve a real problem. And the real problem is that there aren't enough special places for children who need them. And there's also a problem where there are children who are in specialist provisions who perhaps could be in mainstream provisions if the inclusive provision was right in that mainstream school. Now, there's a lot of schools that get that right. So it feels as though this is being done as a bit of a halfway, or has been created as a bit of a halfway house to try to resolve those two problems at the same time, but not quite get it right in resolving either of them, because it doesn't quite solve the problem around places, and it doesn't quite solve the problem around inclusion in the mainstream school. In essence, what it does is it does what a lot of bases, provisions, whatever you call them in schools, end up doing, which is the potential for them to be dumping grounds for the children who can't integrate into the mainstream. And that's my worry here. Yes, okay, look, let's get past the idea of resourcing. What happens when these become just a place to hold children who aren't part or don't fit, not because we don't think they fit, because that's the attitude of schools.
And also, the routes into them are very poorly defined sometimes. If we're saying that every secondary school should have these bases, are they going to specialise in particular areas where, so with a specialist resource provision, for example, where children have educational healthcare plans, it might be for children with hearing impairments, it might be children with vision impairments, it might be children with who are autistic. Is it just going to be a whole myriad and vagueness, or is it that you're going to have sort of beacon provisions which focus on hearing impairment, for example, and so on. And that's part of the mainstream school, and the children access kind of the core curriculum. I mean, and will it be that the trusts and academies or the local authority define that? I suppose my other issue is that the local authority has oversight of children under Section 19 and all the children within the area. What happens if a trust decides that they want to create a base, but actually a local authority disagrees with it and says that's not what the main need is? So how are those kind of conversations going to happen? And I suppose we'll see, because these are the conversations. It's like we're being drip fed things that are going to come out, aren't we, in the white paper? That's what it feels like. And sense checking it before the white paper is formally announced. I don't know when it's coming out. I suspect it will be sooner rather than later. And maybe some of this detail will be in there. And maybe some of the detail will be in there after lots of people are having conversations about it.
It's typical at the moment. This has been a strategy employed by different governments and different parties, which is let's drip feed certain policy ideas, see how they land, and then we'll either roll them back slightly or we'll roll them out. And in education over probably the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a lot of that. And a lot of it has never come to fruition because there's been this sort of discourse which says, well, hang on, is this the right way to do it? Let's take another example which kind of exemplifies this really, really well and links back to what you just said, which is that in some local authorities, you have multiple special schools where all of the special schools end up being for all pupils of all profiles. And so therefore, you don't have special schools when you could very easily work with your local authorities. And partly, not to say it's to blame, partly that is a consequence of the multi-academy trust system. Partly that is a consequence of fewer and fewer spaces, not being able to fulfill the demand. And so children are just put into schools because there might be a space. And then the profile and the cohort of the school changes, and all of a sudden you are catering to a wider range of needs, and you might not have the specialism to deal with those needs. And we've got to a point in some parts of the country where local authorities are doing the right thing and trying to roll that back and trying to redesignate schools to make sure that we do have very, very specialists. But you can see this happening again. You can see when different parties have a different role to play, what doesn't make sense is to say, well, we're going to let some people do it, and then we're going to let local authorities do it. What would make more sense would be to have a local plan. And the local plan is shared resources, and we say, right, we're going to create this space here for that need, this space here for that need, rather than, okay, we're going to give you some money. Well, actually, it doesn't say they're going to give anybody any money. What it says, and the words you used, was that some schools and trusts will fund this. Yes. Now, that makes it sound like they're going to find that money themselves. And that is a concern. Rolls back to what we just said about resourcing.
But I think if we have a local inclusion plan, because actually this isn't just a thing that sits within education either, because actually the health board need to be an integrated part of that, because actually some of these children will have developmental needs, health needs, and associated kind of social care needs as well. And it feels like it is schools solving some of the challenges when we need to make sure that we're resourcing them appropriately. Absolutely having the specialist teaching services, which have been stripped back from the local authority horrendously, but also things like speech and language therapists, occupational therapists, and so on, that can really help children and kind of develop their skills and perhaps where some of the issues are. But at the moment, it feels very, very situated within the realms of education, rather than the kind of broader realms of educational, health and social care.
Well, in the UK, schools have become the world police, haven't they?
Yeah, we do everything.
That's what it is. We are now the world police. Every time there's a new idea or a new initiative or something that's wrong within our society, it's the responsibilities of schools to do that.
Well, that moves us very nicely onto the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. So the bill has completed the Lords stages and returns to the Commons. And the key Lords amendments agreed were smartphone ban during the school day, but also other things like mandatory allergy safety policies for all English schools, and preventing school adjudicator from ordering high-performing schools to reduce admission numbers. There's been things such as amendments ban on VPNs, virtual private network, is that what it stands for?
Yep.
VPNs for under 18s. And that's because, I suppose, most recently, you're not able to access certain websites and certain chat functions like pornography and so on if you come from England and your VPN shows that you come from England, that you can't access pornographic websites without proving your age. So I presume that's to prevent under 18s from viewing inappropriate material online.
It is, because the thing that they forgot with the online safety bill was that the people they were trying to protect from accessing those sorts of sites are the ones who are the most savvy about internet and about VPNs, and therefore it was very easy for them to get around things.
You just use NordVPN. That's all you need to do. It's not even particularly difficult.
But here's what I don't understand. So that now, from what you've said there, that's the first I've heard that now what they're going to do is they are going to restrict the use of VPNs. Well, the nature of VPNs is they're unrestricted.
Yeah,
you get round. I can't see VPNs being made to regulate everybody who uses them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they are able to manage that. I don't know. Yeah, so apparently only 11% of schools currently have phone bans despite previous guidance. So the majority of schools don't ban. But there's also different people that kind of oppose the ban. So the Carers Trust opposed the ban. So, for example, because of the caring responsibilities, one young carer in debate said, "I'm not going to go into school then because I'll be too worried about the person I'm looking after." And the implication that phone bans have attendance implications for the most vulnerable. There's an exclusion link as well. So there's linked smartphones to record 10,885 permanent exclusion in 2023-24. But actually, I think these issues still exist. And I think any issue always now kind of ends up on social media, but it's not necessarily where it starts. It can be, absolutely, but it's certainly where it ends up. And I think there's that kind of bigger surveillance picture. So if we're looking at VPN bans, social media bans, and so on over children's kind of digital lives, what does it mean for how do we support children when they are allowed to start using these things? And what does that mean for them? And I'm actually quite supportive of a ban of mobile phones in school, actually. I am quite supportive of it, but I think it also almost we need a graduated approach to support children to be able to use this technology in a safe way. Because I think if it's a bit like, a kind of cliff edge that now you're allowed to use it, then how have we taught them the skills to be able to understand the information that's available, to be able to keep themselves safe and to not go onto websites that are dodgy?
We talked about this before. We talked about how when we were at school,
yes,
if somebody needed to get in contact with you, they rang the school.
Yep.
And unfortunately, as with a lot of things, as we've changed and as technology has changed, things have started to become almost a right when they're not a right. It's like the right to bear arms, the right to bear phones. Okay.
Yeah.
No, there's no such thing. You don't have a right to have a phone because, again, you can't have your phone on you when you're in your workplace unless it's your work phone or it's a part of the work that you do. I mean, it'd be different for somebody like yourself who works in a very different way and works remotely. But I can't have my phone on. Now, I'm not in the classroom really anymore.
No, when I'm in a school.
But I do not take my phone out of my pocket when I am walking through a school, even if it's ringing. We have policies in place which allow me to do that, but I don't do it because I think professionally I'm there to set a tone, I'm there to set a standard, and I don't do it. But,
you're always switching tasks as well, is that you're always like being available to everybody all at the same time just dilutes your availability, doesn't it, as well? That actually you're not focusing and you're not being in the moment and you aren't able to concentrate. And I think, especially with children who struggle with that, I suppose my biggest one...
I think I've said about how I've come off a lot of social media more recently and I don't go on to X anymore. And I used to be on it quite a lot purely because it's given me a break from it that I very much needed. But how do you teach that to young people?
I joked with you earlier. I said, I'll message you on MySpace.
You did.
I found that hilarious.
Bebo, I'd prefer.
Bebo. There are so many options, aren't there? And the other, this is more of an uncomfortable story about the conversations about having mandatory CCTV in nurseries. So it goes on to this idea about safeguarding or surveillance and sort of always being under watch. It comes from, there has been several cases in the news recently. It's horrendous. So the trigger to this discussion, the debate on CCTV, comes from after Vincent Chan, 45 years old, at Bright Horizons Nursery. He passed vetting and worked for 7 years. he admitted 26 offences of sexual abuse against young children. There has been some kind of conversations around. So Bridget Phillipson initially cautioned mandatory CCTV could lead to a misuse of footage. Minister Olivia Bailey says the government is considering the mandatory use of CCTV in early years setting. And I'm generally very anti-surveillance. But I think that if CCTV could protect one child, then it's worth it. Early years in particular, as well as children with disabilities as well, actually. For early years, they don't necessarily have the words or the understanding to be able to say that somebody has hurt them. And if CCTV can prevent that, then I'm all for it. And I think we need to have the mindset of it could happen here. It may happen here. We have to do everything in our power to make sure that we make it as difficult as possible for predators to not be able to do it here or anywhere. And I think that's anywhere their children might be more than 1 or 2 or 3. I think as long as we also make sure that it doesn't give a false sense of security as well, because it's no good having CCTV and not having good checks and balances. But you know, I've said before, I've got younger kids, so I've got 4-year-old twins and I've got a 3-year-old now, as well as my 16-year-old. I can't imagine the pain that those parents are going through, and I hope I never, ever have to know the pain they're going through.
No, and I don't disagree with you at all. And I think it's a cautionary thing, though, for me, in that CCTV actually can be quite a valuable tool in protecting staff as well as, you know, encouraging better behaviour and ensuring that we don't have people that we shouldn't have within our schools and our education settings. The cautionary part, though, is, unfortunately, we have toxicity in the education system, the likes of which I've just never seen anywhere else. And my real concern is the way that something like CCTV can be used against people almost in a constructive way. That's the cautionary bit. But I think that exists in pretty much everything we do within education. Policies and practices always do this. And I think we just need to make sure that we have some really, really clear guidance in place. There needs to be discussions around workers' rights and the right to privacy as well.
Yeah, I get that. But I suppose nursery spaces aren't a private space. Yeah, I think if it can protect, then I'm for the use of CCTV. But then I suppose there's a bit there that you still need to make sure that you're monitoring that. You know, how often do you monitor it? Would you just do audits where you just do random checks? Or is it when you're based on suspicion about people? And I get that, you know, I think early years practitioners are already undervalued and underpaid. And potentially surveillance has this message of we don't trust you. But I think when it comes to safeguarding, yes, I think you have to have that bit of anyone might be someone who exploits children. Because I think if we don't have that mindset, then we become too complacent and then it becomes a risk. I'm not saying it means we don't trust people, but we make sure that we are aware that people can do some terrible things and we need to be in the best position to protect the children that we love and care for, you know, that are in our care. So I get why people wouldn't want to be watched and observed. I understand that. But I think when it comes to children that don't have the words yet, I think it's worth that. I think it's worth that alienation.
And I think what I mean by the cautionary thing is I agree that if you can use something like most schools now have CCTV, most education settings have CCTV anyway, and it's used for good, right? But what I think I mean by that is if you're putting CCTV into a setting on the basis of safeguarding and safety, you shouldn't be using it to criticize someone's performance or their teaching ability. That's where I'm coming from when I talk about cautionary tales.
You have to use it for the reason. Yeah, it can't be.
Absolutely.
We used it and we really don't. We don't like the way that you've engaged in that activity with a child. Yeah, it has to be about. Yeah, it has to be about safety. And I think that's really important as well. And actually, you know, we're used to working in alternative provision and pupil referral units. There is CCTV cameras and, you know, it might be used we wouldn't necessarily use it all the time. But if there was an incident and a child said, oh, I didn't do that, we would just play the footage and went, so tell me what's going on there then, please. And, you know, you've got that information. And it's ironic, isn't it, that, you know, we're talking about a phone ban and I'm quite up for it. Then at the same time going, I want to have more surveillance in early years. But I think you can hold those two things together because there's different reasons. And actually both are about protecting children
absolutely
from harm. So,
yeah. Just going back on the phone thing, I think one of the counter arguments, and I sort of agree, but at the same time, there's other ways of doing this anyway. One of the counter arguments is that phones are a valuable learning resource, and that's one of the things that people put across quite regularly. They say, well, we don't ban phones because we use them as part of our learning, and because we've got a really effective policy in place, which means that pupils don't abuse the use of their phone, that we have a really good relationship with our pupils, and that we've got them to understand its use, that we can use them as learning devices, and we don't need to stop them from having them or taking them away from them. So there is a balance. I get that one of the most effective ways to stop the misuse of phones is to just say, right, no phones. And there are lots of those sort of pouch type technologies now coming into schools that mean that phones can be locked away. So there's lots of strategies and things there, but I feel an outright ban is, again, it's trying to solve a problem without listening to educators. It's trying to say, we fixed that in the same way we just talked about with the kind of the inclusion basis. We're going to fix that by saying you can't have phone. Listen to educators, because some of the educators say, do you know what? We are going to adopt that policy, but some will say we don't need to do that because we've already nailed it.
And it depends on the culture of the school, because there are lots of educators that are very for a ban on phones, and I'm one of those, to be honest.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I know that my older daughter, she used to use her camera to take photographs, because cameras on phones are now amazing, aren't they? So not having the use of the phone meant she couldn't take photographs, which she really enjoyed doing. There are those bits as well, and she's taken some beautiful photographs. Really lovely. I think we need to round up. Do you?
Yeah, but there's something I need to say.
Well, go for it.
Okay, so I discovered something yesterday.
What did you discover, Mr. Matthew Morris?
Okay, so it both delighted me and I felt embarrassed in equal measure.
What was it?
So, well, if you recall, there was some homework previously where we were told to watch a program, or I gave you a program, you gave me a program. Anyway, so you said to me, watch Deadwood. And I said, okay, I'll go and find it. And I'm sure I'd seen it on something. I'm pretty sure in the podcast, I referred to the fact that it had been on Sky Atlantic. It may have been something else. Now, what I did was I had to get Deadwood from behind a paywall to watch it. So I paid for that episode, a couple of quid, watched the episode, really enjoyed it.
And you complained about paying for it?
I didn't. I just made the point that I paid for it. I didn't really complain. But then I went away, and 2 nights ago, I was just kind of flicking through the channels, and Deadwood was on Sky Atlantic. So I thought, well, hang on, if Deadwood's on Sky Atlantic, that means it's in the box sets. So I looked, and it's all there without a paywall.
Hey,
so that's good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm now feel quite ridiculous.
How much do you pay? How much money do you pay? Do you want me to send you the money? Would that make you feel better?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I feel stupid that I didn't know it was there. My argument, I'm going to say this, and I'm probably dead wrong. I'm pretty confident I'm probably wrong, is that I'm sure I searched for it just before I watched it and paid for it. I think it's only gone on there recently. So I think it's gone on there between me paying for it. Anyway, what I'm saying to you is I can now freely watch it, and I will. I'm going to dive into it.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the series that you recommended to me. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
How much of it have you watched?
About 6-7 episodes.
Of season 1?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because it's great. I think it's
really good.
It's just a good bit of fun. It's got great characters. It's got some really dislikable characters. It's got some really funny characters. I tell you what there is about it. It's a very warm thing. And I think the thing I said to you is I like the way it represents the Jewish faith.
Yeah, it is
which
lovely.
Is obviously at the core of it, but it does it in such a really beautiful, well-rounded way.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it's a program about faith at all. It's a romantic comedy, and it's more about comedy.
It's about relationships. Yeah, it's about relationships. Really lovely.
Will we set a homework on a comment section?
I was set homework by DC Bradshaw, so shout out to him, to watch Death of Stalin. I've nearly finished it all. I had like 20 minutes left of the film, but no, I really enjoyed that. So thank you, DC Bradshaw. I did my homework pretty much. I should. And
that's Armando Iannucci, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I remember watching that. I think it's about 2017. I remember watching it when it first came out. it's fantastic. It's just
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. And it took me
Sure
on a
fun.
rabbit hole about Stalin's family, because I quite like when it's based on a historical figure. I quite like the kind of Wikipedia jumps of finding out about this, that, and the other. I quite enjoyed it. How about we end our podcast then with each one of us setting the other one homework? That's what you do at the end of the lesson,
homework.
isn't it?
Yes, teach. Another film, TV one, or what?
Whatever homework you want to set me.
I don't know. You've caught me on the spot now.
No. You should have had this planned, Mr. Matthew Morris.
What you do is I want you to finish both series of Nobody Wants This, because I do think you'll like where it goes. There's one thing that's going to annoy you, but I'm not going to say anything. I'll let you get to that point.
You've already said too much.
No, hopefully I've just piqued your interest.
Your homework is to spend some time finishing off one of your Lego boxes. You don't have to open the new one, but maybe find some time in the next couple of weeks to finish your current Lego build.
Okay, I think I will. So I think when we do the next podcast, I'll have it here and press the button and make the sounds. Because I need something here. I don't know if you've noticed, I've got stuff here and there, and I need something here.
Perfect.
You've just got a lot behind you, which is fantastic.
Got a lot behind me, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. We're going to wrap off with our homework for each other, which is becoming a regular feature now, it seems.
I quite like it. I quite like that other people set me homework as well. So
it's good. Well, it does.
Drop a note in the comments about what homework you think Matt and I should do.
Why not? And if also, as it says on the show notes, please do let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. And in due course, it's always been our plan that we will talk with people on this show as well. But we'll get there when we get there. So nothing left to say other than...
I'm Sarah Johnson.
And I'm Matt Morris. And we
have nothing to bring.